So the national funding formula has been criticised for failing to adequately reflect the needs of pupils with SEND and contributes to significant funding disparities between areas. So in Devon, a child who receives the high needs funding block will get £1,245. In Camden, that same child would get £3,565. So effectively, that child is worth 3 times less in Devon than in Camden. And I spoke to a head teacher, head of a federation in Devon, who had moved from London to Devon, who was absolutely horrified at the level of support she could provide to the children with SEND in her classes in Devon. You know, speech and language therapies, educational psychologist. She said in Camden she could just bring it all in because she had the money, and she just doesn't have it in Devon. It's completely unfair. So can I ask you what assessment your department has made of the impact of this funding formula on SEND provision, and what steps you're taking to address these inequalities by reforming the NFF?
So absolutely recognise what you set out and the challenge. Just to be clear, and I know I think I probably have responded to this both in in-person meetings and in the chamber as well. But we did keep the national funding formula as it is, 25-26, because to change the national funding formula needs to be done really carefully and needs a significant amount of work and input. And obviously the way the time frames work for getting schools their funding allocations and knowing what they have to spend, means that we have to take a slightly longer time frame over any changes that we want to make. But also, we do want to make sure that any changes that we make to the national funding formula do work with the vision that we set out for SEND within the white paper. So that work is ongoing, and we obviously will look at how we create a fair funding system to both meet general education needs and make sure that every child gets the best education, but also with the particular challenge of special educational needs and disabilities and supporting schools to provide for that. One of the issues you raise is related to previous changes to the national funding formula that then resulted in there is always a period of transition. When you change the national funding formula, there is a period by which you can't just switch it overnight. There has to be a gradual change. And I think some of the disparities that you're highlighting are, as my understanding is, they're as a result of previous changes to the national funding formula that are still working their way through the system, as far as I understand it. But I don't know if you've got anything to add.
No, I think that's right. I think we're alive to some of the disparities in the system, but I'd agree with the Minister. It's how do we approach it in the round to try to address some of those, but without creating instability, which is...
Yes. Just to be a bit more specific, do you accept that it is unfair that a child in Devon on a high needs block gets 3 times less money than a child in Camden? Do you accept that there is an unfairness in that allocation of resources?
So I guess that would depend on how you look at what would be fair if we were then to change the system and how soon those changes can work their way through the system.
Because
the issue for schools is you can't just make a big change in their funding allocation from one year to the next. It needs to be done in a gradual way, and I think some of the challenges you outline in the system are where the formula has been changed in the past, but the changes are still working their way through, and that is being done on an annual basis and has to be done quite carefully in amongst the landscape where we also have changing demographics within school cohorts and other challenges within the system. So there is, I can reassure you that there is no intention whatsoever from the Department for Education to allocate funding in a way that is unfair, does not meet the needs of children in a local area, but it is a complex funding system. We need to look at what the different factors are and proxies that are used as part of the way that funding is calculated, and make sure that we do it in a way that is fair, but also that does maintain that stability in the system. Because one of the things I want to be really clear on, actually, just across the board in all of this questioning, is that our priorities are to improve outcomes for children, to improve the situation for families that are, currently having to fight for their education. But also we want to reassure parents and bring them with us, but we also want to maintain stability for schools as well and make sure that there are no shocks to the system. So that these are the priorities that we're working to. We do want to see a different world, but we have to get there in a way that maintains the stability of things that are working well as well.
Can I just ask for a quick yes or no on this one? Are you looking at making the national funding formula fairer across the country?
Yes, we're looking at the national funding formula.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll move on. So